the wolverine. Deep in the northern Rockies, it is 40 degrees below zero. The snow is 3 feet deep and still falling. A wolf pack has made a kill, a full-grown elk brought down after a chase that covered kilometers of frozen terrain. The wolves have eaten their fill and retreated into the tree line. Within hours, something has claimed the carcass. It weighs 11 kilograms. It has paws the size of a large man's fist, jaws that can shear through frozen bone, and a disposition that recognizes no creature on earth as its superior. When one of the wolves returns to investigate, the 11-kilogram animal charges it. The wolf leaves. This is not legend. This is documented field behavior, recorded multiple times by wildlife researchers across North America. The animal is the wolverine, and for 5 million years across 2 continents, through ice ages and extinctions and the arrival of predators far larger than itself, nothing has ever successfully convinced it to back down. The wolverine story does not begin in the Rocky Mountains. It begins in the Pliocene epoch, approximately 5 million years ago, on a continent that looked nothing like the one we know. The ancestor was called Plesiogulo, and it was built along the same lines as the modern wolverine, but scaled upward, reaching an estimated weight of 20 to 25 kilograms. Plesiogulo occupied apex scavenger predator roles across Pliocene Eurasia and North America, competing for carcasses alongside the ancestors of saber-toothed cats and short-faced bears. Fossil material from Pliocene deposits in China, Europe, and North America was described in comparative literature by paleontologist Xiaoming Wang at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County, placing Plesiogulo firmly within the ecological tier of animals that other predators avoided rather than challenged. Verify Wang's specific citation, the modern wolverine, gulo gulo, is not a diminished echo of that animal. It is its direct behavioral continuation, compressed into a smaller body by a world that changed around it while its programming did not. The facts about what the wolverine can do are the kind that sound like exaggeration until you check the research. Adult male wolverines average 11 to 18 kilograms, with documented maximum weights reaching approximately 25 kilograms in exceptional individuals. Their documented prey includes animals up to 200 kilograms, representing a prey-to-body weight ratio at the extreme upper limit recorded for any mammalian predator on Earth. Verify maximum prey weight documentation. A GPS tracking study published in the Journal of Mammalogy by Jeff Copeland in 2010 documented wolverine home ranges of up to 1,000 square kilometers for males, a territorial scale comparable, proportional to body size, to the ranges of wolves and mountain lions. Verify Copeland 2010 citation. Their jaw contains a uniquely modified carnassial tooth, the last upper premolar rotated approximately 90 degrees relative to the standard carnivore jaw alignment, specifically enabling the animal to shear through frozen meat and bone that would fracture the dentition of far larger predators. This is not a general-purpose jaw. It is a tool engineered for accessing carcasses in conditions that defeat other scavengers entirely. The wolverine's cold weather physiology extends this advantage further. Its wide, semicircular paws function as natural snowshoes, distributing weight across deep powder that causes wolves and mountain lions to post-hole and exhaust themselves. Its fur carries microscopic structural features that prevent ice crystal buildup, documented as one of the most effective natural insulators at extreme temperatures among all North American mammals. Verify fur insulation documentation. Wolverines have been tracked traversing distances exceeding 40 kilometers across deep snowpack in a single movement, without rest, in conditions that would constitute a survival emergency for virtually any other mammal of comparable size. They den in spring snowpack, with females excavating tunnels up to 5 meters into late-season snow to protect cubs from freezing, a reproductive strategy so precisely calibrated to deep snowpack that climate researchers now use wolverine denning success rates as a proxy indicator for mountain snowpack health across the American West. Then there is the behavior that wildlife researchers struggle to explain within standard adaptive frameworks. Wolverines documented at wildlife camera stations in Glacier National Park have been recorded successfully displacing black bears averaging 135 kilograms from carcasses through sustained aggressive display and direct physical contact. So the weight disparity in these encounters is approximately 12 to 1. Verify specific Glacier National Park documentation. In field observations compiled across decades of wolverine research, including the multi-year tracking study in Montana conducted by Douglas Chadwick and detailed in The Wolverine Way, researchers consistently describe the same behavioral pattern. The wolverine does not modulate its aggression based on the size of the opposing animal. It escalates. Where other predators make cost-benefit calculations and retreat when confronted with a superior opponent, the wolverine has no apparent retreat threshold. It responds to threat with more threat, regardless of the arithmetic. The mainstream explanation for this is straightforward. Wildlife biologists argue that the wolverine's aggression is a direct product of its ecological niche, low-density boreal and alpine habitat where food is critically scarce, and any carcass successfully defended represents a survival margin. In an environment where the next meal may be days and dozens of kilometers away, the calculus of aggression shifts dramatically. An animal that reliably drives larger competitors from food sources, even at physical risk, outcompetes an animal that retreats, regardless of body size. The wide snowshoe paws, the frozen bone jaw, the cold tolerance, the aggression template, all of it is standard adaptation to a specific extreme environment shaped by selection pressure over millions of years. But here is what the environmental explanation doesn't fully account for. The wolverine's behavioral profile exceeds what ecological scarcity alone should produce. It doesn't simply defend food from larger animals when pressed. It actively seeks confrontation. Field researchers who have spent years observing wolverines describe a consistent behavioral quality that sits outside normal adaptive explanation. The wolverine appears to be constitutionally incapable of recognizing a more powerful opponent as a reason to stop. This is not a learned survival strategy refined by experience. Cubs exhibit it before they have any experience to draw on. It is a template, and the template appears to be running a calibration that no longer matches the current world. In the Pliocene, when Placiogullo competed in an ecosystem without short-faced bears and dire wolves and American lions, that calibration may have been appropriate. As the Pleistocene brought larger apex predators into the same ranges, the wolverine's aggression template became disproportionate to reality, a behavioral overreaction to the present world, perfectly calibrated for a world 5 million years gone. Some evolutionary biologists call this evolutionary lag, the persistence of behavioral systems calibrated for an ecological context that no longer exists. The wolverine cannot update the program. It carries a ghost memory of a Pliocene landscape where its ferocity made complete, rational sense, and it runs that program in a Rocky Mountain winter, whether the opponent is a wolf or a grizzly or a researcher in a field jacket who got too close to a cache. The body shrank to fit a smaller world. The behavioral architecture did not, and that gap between what the wolverine's programming expects and what the world actually contains is where 5 million years of apex predator heritage sits undiminished in an animal you could theoretically lift with one hand. From a creature carrying the behavioral template of a Pliocene apex predator forward into a world that has forgotten what produced it, we travel south and east across the Pacific to a chain of volcanic islands where another ancient predator survived not because it was the most adapted, but simply because the sea rose fast enough to protect it from us. The Komodo dragon. The year is 50,000 BCE. Across the Australian continent, a monitor lizard the length of a city transit bus is moving through open woodland in pursuit of a giant wombat the size of a small hippopotamus. The lizard's name, assigned by paleontologists working millions of years in its future, will be Varanus priscus, though it will be known more commonly as Megalania, the great roamer. It is the largest venomous animal that has ever lived on Earth. Its tongue flickers, sampling chemical gradients in the air with a sensitivity that renders scent into three-dimensional spatial information. It knows exactly where the wombat is, it knows exactly how far away. Then the humans arrived in Australia. And then Megalania was gone. What survived is on Komodo Island, and it is still hunting. The Komodo dragon, Varanus komodoensis, was unknown to Western science until 1910, when Lieutenant van Stein van Hensbroek of the Dutch colonial administration, having heard reports from Malay pearl fishermen of a land crocodile on Komodo Island, dispatched a hunting party that returned with skins and photographs. Their formal scientific description was published by Peter Owens in 1912. What those early descriptions captured was a living monitor lizard reaching 3 meters in length and weighing up to 90 kilograms, an animal that killed and consumed deer, pigs, and water buffalo using an ambush strategy identical in structure to the one Megalania had used to hunt megafauna on the Australian mainland. The evolutionary connection was established through comparative anatomy and molecular phylogenetics, with key fossil work by researchers including Scott Hocknull of the Queensland Museum refining timelines for the Varanus lineage in Australia. Verify Hocknull specific role. The genetic distance between Varanus komodoensis and Varanus priscus is not great. What changed was the scale. And the scale changed because the island shrank the predator to fit it. The evidence for what the Komodo dragon actually is, biologically and behaviorally, dismantles the assumptions most people carry about it. At Varanus priscus reached an estimated length of 4.5 to 7 meters, with weight estimates ranging from 97 kilograms at the conservative end to over 300 kilograms in larger reconstructions, a range reflecting genuinely fragmentary fossil material. Verify Roe estimates. The Komodo dragon's venom was definitively confirmed only in 2009 in a study by Brian Fry at the University of Melbourne, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, which identified dual venom gland systems producing anticoagulant compounds and overturned over 100 years of scientific consensus that had attributed prey deaths to bacterial infection alone. Verify Fry, 2009, citation. The dragon detects prey from up to 9.5 kilometers away using a bifurcated tongue that samples airborne chemical gradients and channels information to the Jacobson's organ, a chemosensory system more sensitive than any documented in any other living monitor lizard. Adult Komodo dragons routinely hunt prey ranging from Timor deer to water buffalo, weighing up to 700 kilograms, a prey-to-predator weight ratio of up to 10:1 that mirrors, proportionally, the relationship between Megalania and the giant wombats and diprotodons it hunted on the Australian mainland. A 2006 study in Nature by Philip Watts and colleagues confirmed that Komodo dragons are capable of facultative parthenogenesis, producing viable male offspring without fertilization, a reproductive strategy that would have been critical for isolated island populations moving through genetic bottlenecks, and one that potentially explains how a large apex predator maintained population viability on a 400 square kilometer island. Verify Watt citation. Komodo Island itself is only 390 square kilometers, smaller than the city of Chicago, and as of the 2021 IUCN assessment supports approximately 1,700 wild individuals. The species is now classified as endangered, with sea level rise projected to eliminate up to 30% of available habitat by 2050. Verify IUCN population figure. The mainstream explanation for the Komodo dragon's existence is clean and well supported. Sea levels rose approximately 12,000 years ago at the end of the last glacial maximum, isolating Varanus populations on what are now the Lesser Sunda Islands. Reduced competition, smaller available prey, and island resource constraints produced a smaller animal through insular dwarfism. The predator persisted because the island ecosystem still contained large enough prey to support it, and because no competing apex predators were present to challenge its position. The hunting strategy and venom system were retained because they continued to work. There is nothing anomalous here in the mainstream view, only a large predator in a simplified island ecosystem. But the timing of Megalania's extinction raises a question the island isolation model doesn't fully resolve. Megalania disappears from the Australian fossil record approximately 50,000 years ago. That is, according to the best current dating, almost exactly when anatomically modern humans arrived, on the Australian continent. Not a gradual extinction across millions of years of climate change. A sharp disappearance correlated with the arrival of a single new variable, U.S. The Varanus populations that became the Komodo dragon didn't survive because they were more adaptable than Megalania. They survived because the Wallatian island chain was beyond the operational range of early human hunting pressure. The Komodo dragon exists not because it won an evolutionary competition. It exists because the sea rose between it and the thing that was eliminating every large predator it could reach. It is not a survivor of natural selection's judgment, it is a refugee. Some paleoecologists studying late Pleistocene extinctions, including Tim Flannery in his foundational work on human arrival and megafauna collapse, argue that the pattern of extinction across Australia was so precisely correlated with human expansion routes that it constitutes something close to a controlled experiment in the effects of a novel apex predator on a naive megafauna. If that framework is correct, then the Komodo dragon is the last preserved data point in an experiment that concluded 50,000 years ago. Megalania is the result. The Komodo dragon is the control group, and the variable that separates them is the same variable that has reshaped every apex predator ecosystem it has entered since. From the last island refuge of a predator lineage that humans dismantled everywhere else they reached, we travel north and west across the Indian Ocean to the waterways of Southeast Asia and northern Australia, where a predator that predates the dinosaurs by more than 100 million years is still claiming the same position it has always held at the water's edge, in the dark, waiting. The saltwater crocodile. 200 million years ago, in the late Triassic period, when the dinosaurs were just beginning to establish themselves as the dominant terrestrial fauna, there was already a crocodile in the river. Not this crocodile, not this species, but the same architecture, the armored back, the laterally compressed tail, the jaw that closes with force nothing alive today can match, the patient stillness at the water's edge that can be sustained for hours without movement. The dinosaurs diversified. They grew enormous. They developed feathers and warm blood and complex social structures. And then, 66 million years ago, they were gone. The crocodile was still in the river. It is still there now, and it has the highest measured bite force of any living animal on Earth. The saltwater crocodile, Crocodilus porosus, was formally described by Johann Gottlob Schneider in 1801. But the deeper story of its lineage became dramatically clearer in 2001 when Paul Sereno of the University of Chicago led an expedition into the Sahara Desert and excavated Sarcosuchus imperator from Cretaceous rock formations in what is now Niger. Sarcosuchus, nicknamed Super Croc by the research team, reached an estimated 12 meters in length and weighed approximately 8 metric tons. Its skull alone was 1.5 meters long. It hunted in river systems that 110 million years ago crossed what is now the Saharan interior, ambushing dinosaurs at the water's edge using the same fundamental technique the saltwater crocodile uses today on water buffalo and feral pigs in the Northern Territory. The body plan worked then. It works now. In 200 million years, natural selection has not produced a meaningful improvement on it. The measurements associated with the modern saltwater crocodile are not comfortable to sit with. Its bite force has been directly measured at approximately 16,400 newtons in research by Gregory Erickson of Florida State University, the highest bite force ever recorded in a living animal, exceeding even the great white shark in direct measurement protocols. Verify specific Erickson citation. The largest accurately measured individual in recent history was a male named Lolong, captured in the Philippines in 2011 and measured at 6.17 meters in length before his death in captivity in 2013. Historical accounts reference individuals exceeding 7 meters, though these are not formally verified. Verify Lolong measurements. The species is capable of traveling up to 900 kilometers in open ocean, documented through satellite tracking by biologist Mark Reed in a 2010 study, which explains how an apparently freshwater apex predator colonized island systems across the Pacific and Indian Oceans over geological time. Verify red citation. The crocodilian lineage has survived every major extinction event in the past 200 million years. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction, approximately 201 million years ago, eliminated most of the large archosaurs that had dominated the Triassic. The crocodilians remained. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, 66 million years ago, eliminated all non-avian dinosaurs. The crocodilians remained. Multiple Cenozoic climate oscillations that restructured terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems across every continent produced no fundamental change in the crocodilian body plan. Yet a saltwater crocodile alive today is metabolically capable of surviving for over a year without eating, a fasting tolerance with no equivalent among large apex predators, and one that would have been directly relevant to surviving the ecological collapses following mass extinction events. And in 2013, researchers Vladimir D. Nates, John Bryan, and Kent Brogan published observations in Ethology, Ecology, and Evolution documenting saltwater and mugger crocodiles balancing sticks on their snouts near nesting bird colonies during nesting season, the first documented tool use in any reptile in an animal whose brain structure has remained essentially stable for 80 million years. Verified DNA citation. The mainstream explanation for crocodilian survival is both simple and genuinely compelling. Semi-aquatic ambush predation at the water-land interface is an extraordinarily energy-efficient strategy that succeeds across a wide range of ecological communities regardless of what prey species are present, because everything drinks. Combined with extreme metabolic flexibility and a physiology that tolerates wide ranges of temperature, salinity, and dissolved oxygen, the crocodilian design is among the most broadly generalist apex predator architectures in vertebrate evolutionary history. Generalism, not specialization, is what survives extinction events. The crocodile is the proof. But nearly every large predator lineage in the fossil record began as a generalist. The large ground sloths were generalists. The mesonychids were generalists. The creodonts were generalists. They are all gone. The crocodilian is not gone, and it isn't a relic barely maintaining its population. In the river systems of northern Australia and Papua New Guinea, where it is left without active persecution, it is thriving. Saltwater crocodiles are responsible for an estimated 1,000 or more human fatalities annually, though records are unreliable in remote areas, and the species is classified as least concern by the IUCN. The design is not persisting. It is succeeding in the present tense against everything the modern world has put in front of it. Some evolutionary biologists invoke the concept of key innovation to explain this. A single biological development so broadly advantageous that it terminates the evolutionary pressure for further major change. For crocodilians, candidates include the four-chambered heart, unique among living reptiles, which provides the metabolic efficiency of birds and mammals without the thermoregulatory cost. The palatal valve, which allows the jaws to open underwater without flooding the airway. And an immune system whose blood compounds have been shown in laboratory studies to neutralize HIV, West Nile virus, and multiple antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Verify crocodilian blood antimicrobial research. If any of these represent genuine key innovations, then what looks like evolutionary stasis is actually a state of such thorough optimization that continuation is the only logical outcome. The crocodile didn't stop evolving because nothing changed. It stopped evolving because it had finished. From the river's edge, where a 200-million-year-old predator still holds the same position it always has, we surface into open water and travel east across the Pacific toward the deep cold of the North Pacific Basin, where the largest predatory fish that ever lived left an ecological vacancy 3.5 million years ago. And the animal that filled it brought something to ocean apex predation that no fish ever had. The orca. 3.5 million years ago, in the late Pliocene, Otodus megalodon disappeared from the fossil record. 18 meters, 60 tons, teeth 18.5 centimeters long. The largest predatory fish in the history of life on Earth simply ceased to leave evidence of its existence, and the ocean reorganized itself around its absence. What expanded into the resulting vacancy was not a larger fish or a more powerful bite. It was a mammal, one that had been evolving alongside the megalodon for millions of years, quietly developing a capability the megalodon never possessed and never could have: the ability to teach. The orca did not simply replace the megalodon at the top of the ocean food chain. It introduced a new category of apex predator, one whose advantage compounds across generations rather than resetting with each birth. The orca, Orchinus orca, diverged from ancestral delphinid dolphins approximately 10 to 11 million years ago. Its genus name, referencing Orcus, the Roman deity of the underworld, a name given by sailors who observed them attacking other whales and recognized something that exceeded the ordinary logic of predation. Verify Roman etymology. The specific South African events that brought orca predation on great white sharks to global scientific and public attention were documented systematically beginning in 1997 and culminating in observations compiled by shark researcher Alison Towner of the Dyer Island Conservation Trust, published with colleagues in the African Journal of Marine Science, documenting a pair of orcas designated port and starboard systematically hunting white sharks off Ganspy, removing their livers with what field researchers described as surgical precision, and inducing such a sustained fear response in the local great white population that the sharks abandoned a stretch of ocean exceeding 50 kilometers in length that they had occupied for decades. Verified journal and details. The neurological profile of the orca stands apart from every other ocean predator, living or extinct. Their limbic system, the brain region associated with emotional processing and social bonding, contains an additional neural layer not found in human brains, identified by researchers Patrick Hoff and Esther van der Gucht in a 2007 study in the Anatomical Record. Verify. Different orca populations called ecotypes have developed genetically distinct and culturally transmitted hunting strategies. Big's orcas hunt marine mammals using silence and coordinated ambush. Resident orcas herd salmon using echolocation in family-coordinated formations. Offshore orcas hunt sharks and large fish in open water. Each strategy is learned and transmitted, not instinctive, passed down through matrilineal lines across generations in a form of cultural inheritance with no equivalent among non-human ocean predators. A 2022 study by Croft and colleagues in Current Biology established that female orcas live up to 90 or more years, surviving their reproductive period by 4 decades or longer, one of only 5 mammal species, including humans, known to experience menopause. Verify Croft citation. The proposed explanation for this extraordinary post-reproductive lifespan involves the grandmother effect. Older females transmit survival knowledge, particularly regarding food source locations during scarcity events, in ways that measurably reduce calf mortality within their pods. The orca's longevity is not an incidental biological feature. It is an information storage and transmission system. Each grandmother is a living archive of hunting strategies, migration routes, and environmental knowledge accumulated across a century of ocean experience. The megalodon had teeth. The orca has memory and the ability to share it. Documented orca prey spans a range that no other ocean predator, living or extinct, has been verified to match. Great white sharks averaging 3 to 4 meters, blue whales reaching 30 meters and weighing up to 150 tons, sperm whales, walruses, sea otters, moose swimming between islands in the Pacific Northwest, and in at least one documented encounter, a Greenland shark. Verify moose and Greenland shark citations. This is not specialization. It is comprehensive ecological dominance across every size class of marine prey. The megalodon was large enough to eat almost anything. The orca developed the cognitive flexibility to actually do so, regardless of size, regardless of species, regardless of depth. The mainstream explanation for orca ecological dominance is both well-supported and genuinely adequate on its own terms. Marine biologists describe the orca as the product of mammalian intelligence applied to ocean apex predation, a lineage that combined social structure, neural flexibility, and cultural transmission to produce an adaptability no single strategy predator could match. As ocean temperatures cooled in the late Pliocene and the warm water prey populations supporting megalodon contracted, orcas, capable of switching prey types rapidly and transmitting new strategies within a single generation, filled the resulting vacuum. The replacement was opportunistic expansion, not direct competition. The megalodon was a specialist that couldn't adapt. The orca was a generalist that could adapt faster than genetics. But the timeline is worth sitting with. Megalodon disappears from the fossil record approximately 3.6 million years ago. The period immediately following sees a documented expansion in the diversity and size of prey being taken by cetacean predators. And the specific capability that made this possible, cultural transmission of hunting strategy, means the orca can adapt not at the speed of genetics across generations, but at the speed of learning within a lifetime. A strategy developed by one individual can be distributed across a population within years. The megalodon had 20 million years to develop this capability. It did not. The orca developed it and rendered every purely biological apex predator strategy that preceded it permanently secondary. Some researchers considering the South African evidence of orcas using targeted predation of great whites to eliminate a competing apex predator from a defined stretch of ocean have begun using a term that carries significant weight in ecological theory: ecosystem engineering. Not simply occupying the top of a food chain, but actively reshaping the distribution of other apex predators through strategic intimidation. If this is what the orca is doing, then what replaced the megalodon is not just a more intelligent predator. It is the first ocean predator to manage its ecosystem rather than simply inhabit it, and it has been doing so since the Pliocene. From the open ocean, where intelligence replaced mass as the defining apex predator advantage, we descend through cold water toward the seafloor, where the oldest predatory lineage in this list has been operating since before any vertebrate animal existed at all. The giant Pacific octopus. 500 million years ago in the Cambrian period, before fish had developed jaws, before anything had evolved legs capable of walking on land, before a single animal had breathed air, the apex predators of Earth's oceans were cephalopods. One of them, Camaracaras, an orthocone nautiloid reaching an estimated 9 to 11 meters in length, was likely the largest predator on the planet during the Ordovician period, approximately 470 million years ago, hunting trilobites, early jawless fish, and other cephalopods with a rigid chambered cone shell and grasping tentacles in shallow Ordovician seas. Verify Camaracaras' maximum length. Today, its relative sits at the bottom of Puget Sound in water near freezing, opens child-proof jars to retrieve the crabs sealed inside, recognizes the faces of individual human researchers, and on at least one documented occasion, exited its tank at night, crossed the floor of a marine research facility, entered an adjacent tank, consumed the fish inside, and returned to its own tank before morning. The predator didn't decline over 500 million years. The intelligence scaled up. The giant Pacific octopus, Enteroctopus doflani, is the largest octopus species on Earth, with arm spans documented at up to 6.1 meters and recorded weights exceeding 71 kilograms, though the average healthy adult weighs closer to 15 kilograms with an arm span of approximately 4 meters. Verify maximum documented weight. Its nervous system contains approximately 500 million neurons, more than a rat, but the distribution of those neurons is the detail that complicates every simple description of the animal. 2/3 are located not in the central brain, but distributed throughout its 8 arms, each of which can make independent tactical decisions during hunting without consulting the central brain at all. The arms are not tools of the brain. They are, in a meaningful functional sense, additional brains. The genomic sequencing of the octopus completed by Caroline Albertin and colleagues at the University of Chicago, published in Current Biology in 2015, found that the octopus possesses the largest and most complex genome of any invertebrate, 2.7 billion base pairs, and identified a massive expansion of genes associated with neural development found in no other invertebrate on Earth. Verify Albertine Journal, confirm Current Biology or Nature. The researchers described the octopus genome as so unusual relative to other mollusks that, in their words, it was like encountering an alien genome. This is not rhetorical flourish. The genetic architecture underlying octopus cognition appears to have been assembled through a pathway with no close parallel in the invertebrate world, a set of evolutionary decisions that produce something that functions like a complex mind through a completely different set of biological instructions than any vertebrate used to produce theirs. The behavioral evidence for what that mind can do has been accumulating for decades. Dr. Jennifer Mather at the University of Lethbridge documented individual giant Pacific octopuses at the Seattle Aquarium, consistently recognizing specific staff members, displaying defensive or relaxed body coloring depending on which human approached, a form of individual facial recognition in an animal with no social structure that would evolutionarily require it. Octopuses have been documented using coconut shell halves as portable shelters, carrying them across the seafloor for use later, a behavior that requires both tool use and future-oriented planning. They play, in the technical behavioral sense, engaging in repetitive interaction with objects that provides no immediate survival benefit, a behavior previously considered a marker of vertebrate cognition. And they do all of this with a lifespan of 3 to 5 years, no parental teaching, and no social group to learn from. The camouflage system adds a layer that researchers, including Dr. Roger Hanlon at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole, have studied for decades without fully resolving. The octopus deploys 3 simultaneous systems: chromatophores, pigment sacs that expand and contract to produce color; iridophores, structural color elements that produce iridescent effects through light interference; and papillae, muscular skin projections that alter texture from smooth to spiky within 200 milliseconds. The system produces camouflage so precise that octopuses on patterned backgrounds match not just color, but spatial frequency of the pattern. And the octopus is, as far as current research can determine, almost entirely color blind. How a colorblind animal produces such precisely color-matched camouflage across hundreds of different substrate types remains one of the genuinely open questions in sensory biology. The mainstream explanation for octopus intelligence is clean and well evidenced. Marine biologists describe it as convergent evolution, the independent development of complex cognition through a pathway entirely separate from the vertebrate line, driven by the loss of the protective shell that nautiloid ancestors possessed. An animal with no armor must rely on behavioral flexibility. A short lifespan and complete reproductive isolation with no parent to teach offspring anything creates intense selection pressure for rapid, flexible individual learning. The result is an intelligence that resembles vertebrate cognition in its outputs while being built from completely different biological materials. Convergent evolution producing convergent function. But philosopher and marine biologist Peter Godfrey Smith, in his 2016 book Other Minds, raised a question. The convergent evolution framework doesn't fully contain. If complex cognition evolved twice, independently, from a common ancestor that possessed neither once in the cephalopod lineage and once in the vertebrate lineage, both diverging from a shared ancestor approximately 600 million years ago, then the question is not merely how intelligence evolved, but why it keeps evolving from within lineages that were already apex predators. The cephalopods were the apex predators of the Cambrian and Ordovician. The early vertebrates were their prey. Both lineages eventually produced complex cognition. Both lineages are represented by apex predators today. Some researchers ask whether the connection between apex predation and complex intelligence is not coincidental but causal. Whether the most intense and sustained evolutionary pressure for complex cognition is precisely the position of being the thing at the top of the food chain, the thing that must model the behavior of everything below it in order to catch it. From the cold Pacific seafloor, where a lineage 500 million years old continues its apex predator role through the medium of distributed intelligence, we rise to the surface and travel west to the sun-saturated savanna of East Africa, where a predator was painted on a cave wall 36,000 years ago by a human being who was afraid of it, and where that predator's direct descendants are making the same kill today in the same way. The African lion. The year is 36,000 BCE. Deep in a cave system in what will one day be called southern France, a human being stands in flickering torchlight and paints a lion on limestone. Not a rough outline, not a symbol scratched by someone who had heard about lions from someone else. A fully realized, anatomically precise, dynamically posed lion, rendered with shading techniques that European painting would not rediscover for another 30,000 years. The person holding the torch had seen this animal. Almost certainly, the person holding the torch had lost someone to this animal. Across a range stretching from the British Isles to Alaska, the cave lion, Panthera spelaea, was the apex felid predator of the Northern Hemisphere, competing directly with anatomically modern humans for territory, for shelter, and for the same megafauna prey. The paintings at Chauvet Cave are not just the oldest known representational art on Earth. They are the first documented record of a species recognizing another species as its equal at the top of the food chain. Chauvet Cave was discovered on December 18, 1994, by spelunkers Jean-Marie Chauvet, Eliette Brunel, and Christian Hilaire in the Ardèche Gorge of southern France. The cave contains more than 420 individual animal paintings, including at least 74 depictions of cave lions, the highest concentration of lion imagery in any known Paleolithic art site on Earth. Radiocarbon dating, directed by researcher John Klotz, who led the scientific study of the cave, placed the earliest paintings at approximately 36,000 years before present, making them the oldest known figurative art yet discovered. A 2016 study in Open Quaternary by Barnett and colleagues using ancient mitochondrial DNA extracted from cave lion remains confirmed that Panthera spelaea was a sister lineage to the modern African lion Panthera leo, not a distinct species, meaning the genetic distance between the animal depicted on the cave wall and the animal currently hunting wildebeest on the Serengeti is smaller than it appears. Verify Barnett. Citation details. Panthera spelaea was approximately 10 to 12% larger than modern African lions, with adult males estimated at 250 to 300 kilograms compared to the modern lion's average male weight of 186 kilograms. Verify cave lion size estimates. Its geographic range was the widest of any large felide in the Pleistocene, extending from the British Isles across Eurasia to Alaska via the Bering Land Bridge, a distribution covering more territory than any single felid species before or since. Cave lion remains recovered from sites in Ireland, documented in the 2016 genetic research, have been dated to approximately 24,000 years ago, suggesting the species persisted in Western Europe far later than previously believed and into extended contact with modern humans expanding across the continent. Verify Irish cave lion dating. The lion's roar, produced by uniquely shaped square vocal fold ligaments documented in 2011 acoustics research by Ingo Tietze at the National Center for Voice and Speech, carries up to 8 kilometers and triggers measurable physiological stress responses in both prey animals and in controlled studies in humans, suggesting that the human fear response and the acoustic signature of Panthera may have co-evolved through millions of years of shared predator-prey territory. What the Chauvet paintings show is as remarkable as the fact that they exist. The cave lion depictions include animals in coordinated group postures with ears flattened and bodies oriented in pursuit stances that precisely match the pre-charge behavioral postures documented in modern Serengeti field research. The human who painted them understood lion behavior at a level of observational detail that required sustained close study of animals that were actively dangerous. This was not nature appreciation. This was the documentation of a competitor. Modern lions retain the behavioral systems, coordinated pride hunting, roar-coordinated territorial defense, communal cub rearing, that conferred advantage against Pleistocene megafauna, including woolly mammoths, cave bears, and giant bison, and these same systems function with equal efficiency against zebra and wildebeest today. The toolkit was built for one world and continues to work in another. The mainstream zoological explanation for the lion's behavioral persistence is well-grounded. The pride system distributes hunting risk, enhances efficiency against prey larger than any individual could take alone, and pools cub-raising resources in ways that allow the species to succeed across diverse ecosystems. The transition from cave lion to modern lion represents a contraction in size and range corresponding to the end Pleistocene megafauna extinction approximately 13,000 years ago, as lions adapted their cooperative hunting system to smaller prey in restructured ecosystems. The behavioral continuity between Panthera spelaea and Panthera leo is simply the persistence of an adaptive social system that works regardless of what the prey species are. But consider the following. The megafauna on which the cave lion's entire ecology was based was eliminated. The woolly mammoth, gone. The cave bear, gone. The woolly rhinoceros, gone. The giant Irish elk, gone. The prey base that had sustained Panthera spelaea through 300,000 years of glacial and interglacial cycles was essentially removed from every ecosystem the lion occupied within a geologically brief period. The lion did not go extinct. It contracted its range, adjusted its prey targets, and continued. The same coordinated hunting system that brought down cave bears now brings down Cape buffalo. The same territorial roar that carried 8 kilometers across Pleistocene steppe still carries 8 kilometers across savanna grass. An animal whose entire ecological basis was destroyed adapted to the loss and kept running the same behavioral program in a smaller world. Not by becoming something new. By being sufficiently general that what it already was continued to work. Some anthropologists, including Pat Shipman of Penn State University, have proposed that the coevolution between early humans and large felid apex predators was not purely adversarial but deeply formative, that the cognitive and social demands of competing with Panthera-level predators for shelter, food, and territory may have been among the selective pressures that drove the expansion of human cooperative social intelligence. If correct, then the cave paintings at Chauvet are not merely art. They are evidence that the human mind was, in part, built in response to the animal depicted on the wall. And the modern lion, the direct genetic heir of the animal that helped shape human cognition, is still running the same system it ran when we were first afraid of it. From the African savanna were the oldest known art documents humanity's recognition of a predator equal. We travel north across the equator and east across the Indian Ocean over the volcanic islands of the Indonesian archipelago to the dense layered canopy of South America's Amazon basin, where the sky itself was for 60 million years the most dangerous place on a continent. The harpy eagle. For 60 million years, South America was an island. A tectonic accident sealed it from North America by an ocean channel, and on that sealed island continent, evolution ran its own separate experiment. The outcome was unlike anything that developed on any other landmass. The apex predators of South America were not cats. They were not dogs. They were not bears. They were birds. Flightless, 3-meter tall, 300-kilogram birds with beaks like battle axes and legs that could shatter bone, running down prey across open Patagonian grassland at speeds that no human could outpace. The Forus racidae, the terror birds, ruled South America's apex predator tier for nearly 60 million years, a duration that exceeds the entire post-dinosaur Cenozoic era. 3 million years ago, the land bridge to North America opened, and placental mammalian predators, the ancestors of jaguars, pumas, and wolves, poured south. The terror birds lost the ground. Their ecological successor took the sky. It is still up there, and its talons are larger than a grizzly bear's claws. The terror birds were formally described in 1887 by Florentino Ameghino, based on fossil material from Patagonian rock formations. Subsequent work, including a 2007 analysis by Lawrence Whitmer at Ohio University, using CT scanning to reconstruct terror bird skull biomechanics, confirmed they were hypercarnivorous apex predators dispatching prey through powerful downward axe-like beak strikes rather than gripping bites, a technique suited to killing mammals quickly without the prey fighting back long enough to cause injury. The largest species, Kelenken guillermois, stood approximately 3 meters tall, weighed an estimated 220 to 230 kilograms, and possessed a skull 71.6 centimeters in length. It described in a 2007 paper in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology. Verify Kelenken skull measurement and authors. The harpy eagle, Harpia harpia, first described by Linnaeus in 1758, has been studied intensively by field researchers, including long-term teams in the Peruvian and Brazilian Amazon. What those studies document is an aerial predator whose physical and behavioral profile exceeds every other flying bird alive. The harpy eagle's rear hallux talons reach up to 13 centimeters in length, longer than the claws of an adult grizzly bear, which typically range from 5 to 10 centimeters. The grip force has been estimated at approximately 42 kilograms per square centimeter. Verify grip force figure. Female harpy eagles are nearly twice the size of males, a trait called reverse sexual dimorphism, reaching wingspans of approximately 2 meters and weights up to 10 kilograms. The female is the primary hunter of large prey. Documented prey items include two-toed sloths up to 8 kilograms, howler monkeys, coatis, large iguanas, and mammals approaching the size of small deer. The prey-to-predator weight ratio this represents hunting animals up to 3 times its own. Body weight with sufficient regularity to sustain a breeding pair mirrors the proportional relationship between terror birds and their documented prey range precisely. The harpy eagle's facial disc, a flat ring of stiff feathers surrounding the face, functions identically to an owl's facial disc, channeling ambient sound to the ears to enable precision acoustic hunting through dense three-dimensional forest canopy where visual tracking of prey through foliage is frequently impossible. This adaptation has no equivalent among raptors of other continents, and its presence in a bird hunting large arboreal mammals through closed canopy rainforest represents a level of specialization that took millions of years to develop. The species is currently classified as vulnerable by the IUCN Red List, with the total wild population estimated at fewer than 50,000 individuals and declining, driven by Amazon deforestation rates that continue to compress available habitat year by year. Verify population estimate and current deforestation rate. The mainstream biological explanation for the harpy eagle's extreme predatory specialization is ecologically grounded. South America's dense canopy ecosystems contain a uniquely high density of large, slow arboreal prey, particularly sloths and large primates, that represent an energy-rich and relatively accessible food source for any predator capable of navigating three-dimensional forest canopy at speed. The harpy's large body size, powerful talons, and facial disc are adaptations to this specific hunting environment developed through standard evolutionary processes over millions of years. The connection to terror birds is ecological parallel rather than inherited lineage, convergent predator strategies in a continent that has consistently produced apex avian predators for reasons rooted in South America's specific faunal history. But the temporal sequence invites a different reading. South America's apex avian predators, the terror birds, lost their position not to a better designed competitor, but to a geographic accident, the opening of the Isthmus of Panama and the sudden introduction of mammalian predators from the north. The timing of the harpy eagle's ascension to apex canopy predator status in South America corresponds almost precisely to the period when ground-level avian dominance collapsed under the pressure of the Great American Biotic Interchange approximately 3 million years ago. The sky did not lose its apex bird. The apex bird moved the battlefield upward to the one dimension where the newly arrived mammalian competitors from the north could not follow. Whether this represents niche inheritance, the rapid filling of a vacated ecological role by the nearest available predator, or something more continuous in South American avian predator ecology is a question some researchers in evolutionary biogeography are still working through. What seems clear is this: 60 million years of avian apex predation on a continent is not an accident of biology. It is a sustained evolutionary statement about what works in South American ecosystems. The terror birds set it from the ground for nearly 60 million years. The harpy eagle says it from the sky. The continent keeps producing the same answer to the same question from different angles, in different forms, across geological time. And that answer, right now, is a bird with grizzly bear talons hunting in the canopy of the oldest and most biodiverse forest on Earth, in a range that is shrinking by the year. From the Amazon canopy, where 60 million years of apex avian predation compressed into a single airborne predator. We cross the Atlantic and travel east to the shallow shores of North America and Southeast Asia, so where something has been hauling itself out of the surf on spring-high tides since before the first tree grew on land. The horseshoe crab. Every spring, on the beaches of Delaware Bay, approximately 400,000 to 500,000 armored animals drag themselves from the surf at high tide and deposit their eggs in the sand. They were doing this before there were insects, before there were amphibians, before there were trees, before anything with a backbone had successfully colonized land. The horseshoe crab's lineage extends to approximately 445 million years ago, the Ordovician period, and the modern animal, Limulus polyphemus, is morphologically so close to specimens from 250 million years ago that paleontologists have classified it a living fossil for over a century. 5 mass extinctions have restructured marine ecosystems from the seafloor up. The horseshoe crab attended all 5 and changed nothing meaningful about its body plan. And today, its blood is the only substance on Earth capable of detecting the bacterial contamination that would make injectable medications lethal to humans, and there is no synthetic alternative that the global pharmaceutical industry has been willing to fully adopt. The oldest horseshoe crab fossil, Lunataspis aurora, was discovered in Manitoba, Canada, and dated to approximately 445 million years ago, published in 2008 in the journal Paleontology by researchers David Rudkin and Graham Young. The modern horseshoe crab is so morphologically similar to specimens from the Permian period, 250 million years ago, that it effectively qualifies as the same animal observed across 250 million years. The Permian extinction at 252 million years ago killed over 90% of all marine species. The horseshoe crab was among the 10% that continued. The KPG extinction 66 million years ago eliminated the non-avian dinosaurs. The horseshoe crab continued. The behavioral pattern, nocturnal spawning on high spring tides synchronized by lunar cycle on specific shallow sandy beach habitats, has been documented as functionally identical across every population studied, whether in Delaware Bay, the Gulf of Thailand, or the coastal waters of Japan and the Philippines. The medical dimension of the horseshoe crab's story is the detail that transforms it from a biology curiosity into something with direct contemporary stakes. Limulus amebocyte lysate, or LAL, extracted from horseshoe crab blood, is the only substance capable of detecting bacterial endotoxins with sufficient sensitivity for pharmaceutical safety testing. It clots in the presence of as little as 1 part per trillion of endotoxin contamination. Every injectable drug and vaccine approved by the United States Food and Drug Administration is tested using LAL, a regulatory requirement that has been in place since the 1970s. LAL-harvested blood commands a market price of approximately $60,000 per quart from the biomedical industry, with approximately 600,000 horseshoe crabs harvested annually along the U.S. Atlantic coast for bleeding. Verify current LAL market price. The work of Nobel Prize-winning researcher H. Keffer Hartline, who received the 1967 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for his work on horseshoe crab eye neural processing, established the horseshoe crab as one of the most scientifically productive model organisms of the 20th century, contributing to the foundational understanding of how vertebrate eyes process light. The horseshoe crab has 10 eyes distributed across its body, including 2 compound lateral eyes and a pair of median eyes sensitive to ultraviolet light, a sensory arrangement adapted to both deep water darkness and nighttime spawning on beaches. In its prehistoric ecological context, it was an apex predator of shallow seafloors, consuming polychaete worms, mollusks, algae, and soft-bodied invertebrates using a crushing mechanism between its walking legs, a feeding system documented as functionally unchanged from Ordovician fossil specimens. The Delaware Bay spawning aggregation is so ecologically significant that the survival of the redknot Calidris canutus rufa, a migratory shorebird listed as threatened under the United States Endangered Species Act, depends entirely on the availability of horseshoe crab eggs during its northward migration from South America to the Canadian Arctic. The horseshoe crab is, in a very specific and measurable sense, the keystone species for a transcontinental migratory flyway. The mainstream evolutionary explanation for the horseshoe crab's morphological conservatism is well supported and ecologically coherent. When an organism occupies a highly specific ecological niche, soft sediment benthic predation in shallow marine environments that has remained relatively stable across hundreds of millions of years, natural selection produces little pressure for fundamental redesign. The horseshoe crab is a successful specialist whose habitat, while not static, has remained sufficiently similar across geological time to reward the retention of an existing design. Its extraordinary immune system, the same system producing the medically indispensable LAL, may have been the critical variable allowing it to survive the pathogenic and environmental disruptions of mass extinction events that eliminated less immunologically robust organisms. But 5 mass extinctions did not leave shallow marine environments undisturbed. The Permian extinction so thoroughly restructured ocean chemistry that the seafloors of 252 million years ago were functionally unrecognizable from those of 255 million years ago. The Cretaceous Paleogene event acidified surface waters globally and disrupted marine food webs from the bottom up. The horseshoe crab persisted through all of it without a body plan update. The mainstream model attributes this to niche stability, but niche stability across 5 extinction events is itself something that requires explanation. Some researchers in evolutionary biology suggest that the horseshoe crab's immune system may be the key variable, not just a useful adaptation, but potentially the mechanism of its survival. An immune architecture so comprehensive that the pathogenic pressures that drive evolutionary change in other organisms have been consistently neutralized before they could alter the horseshoe crab's reproductive fitness. If that is correct, then the horseshoe crab is not a relic of a simpler time. It is an organism that solved the problem of extinction and has been running the solution for 445 million years. From the ancient shores of Delaware Bay, where an animal older than trees continues its half-billion-year cycle, we travel north into Arctic darkness, to the deepest cold water on Earth, where something has been hunting in the dark since the Devonian period, and individual animals alive today were born before Shakespeare wrote a word. The Greenland shark. There is a shark alive in the Arctic Ocean right now that was born before the Pilgrims reached North America, possibly before Columbus sailed. It has been hunting in water near freezing, in near total darkness, at depths where the pressure would kill most vertebrate animals for centuries. It has no natural predators, it is partially blind, moves at a speed slower than a human walking pace, and is the apex predator of the Arctic deep water ecosystem. And that is just the animal alive today. Its lineage was hunting in these same waters when trilobites still crawled the seafloor, when the first fish were developing jaws, when no vertebrate animal had ever breathed air. The Greenland shark is not an evolutionary relic. It is an evolutionary statement, the same statement repeated without revision for 400 million years. The biological reality of the Greenland shark's longevity was placed on firm scientific ground in 2016 when marine biologist Julius Nielsen at the University of Copenhagen led a team that applied radiocarbon dating of islands nuclei to 28 Greenland shark specimens and published the results in the journal Science. The island's nucleus is metabolically inert tissue formed at birth, meaning its carbon ratio reflects the radiocarbon concentration of the ocean at the time the animal was born rather than the time it was caught. The largest specimen in the study, a female measuring 5.02 meters in length, yielded a radiocarbon age of approximately 392 years with a 95% confidence interval extending to approximately 512 years. That places her birth between 1504 and 1624 CE. She was potentially born before Galileo turned a telescope toward the sky. She has been hunting in Arctic darkness for every year since. Verify exact confidence interval from Nielsen, 2016. The Greenland shark grows at approximately 1 centimeter per year, the slowest growth rate documented in any shark species, and does not reach sexual maturity until approximately 150 years of age. The implications of this for the species' reproductive biology are significant. A Greenland shark must survive a century and a half before it can reproduce for the first time. A 2020 study by Aaron Fisk at the University of Windsor confirmed Greenland sharks as the apex predators of Arctic deep-water ecosystems through stable isotope analysis of their tissue, placing them at the top of the food web above beluga whales in those environments. Verify Fisk 2020 citation. The species belongs to the order Squaliformes, with fossil representatives dating to the early Jurassic period approximately 200 million years ago, and with deeper ancestral connections to Devonian shark evolutionary lineages extending back approximately 400 million years. The shark is commonly parasitized by the copepod Omatocoida elongata, which attaches to the shark's cornea and causes significant damage to vision, yet the animal remains a successful apex predator across an enormous range of prey types and sizes. Its primary sensory systems are electroreception and olfaction rather than vision, allowing it to track prey in conditions of complete darkness at depth where no visual hunting would be possible. Its flesh contains high concentrations of trimethylamine oxide and urea, biochemical compounds that stabilize proteins under extreme cold and pressure but render the flesh lethally toxic when consumed fresh, a biochemical defense unique among large apex predators that effectively eliminates any predatory threat from the many species that would otherwise take a slow, partially blind shark opportunistically. Historical accounts of Greenland shark stomach contents include polar bears, horses, reindeer, and intact moose antlers, though some of these records are anecdotal and predate systematic documentation protocols. Verify historical stomach content accounts. The mainstream biological explanation for the Greenland shark's extreme longevity is metabolic. In water temperatures as low as -2 degrees Celsius, all biological processes, including cellular aging mechanisms, operate at dramatically reduced rates. Cold water metabolic slowdown is a well-documented phenomenon across deep-sea organisms, and the TMAO in the shark's tissues serves the additional function of stabilizing proteins under the pressure of deep-water environments, a chemical adaptation common in abyssal species. In this framework, the Greenland shark's longevity is a straightforward physical consequence of its environment rather than a unique biological innovation, the natural result of extreme cold acting on standard vertebrate biology. But the metabolic slowdown explanation describes the mechanism without addressing the scale. A vertebrate animal with a complex nervous system, a full immune system, active sensory processing, and sustained apex predator behavior is surviving for 5 centuries in conditions that represent a physiological extreme for vertebrate life. Cellular aging in vertebrates is driven by processes, including a telomere shortening, oxidative stress accumulation, and DNA repair failure, that should not be indefinitely suspended by temperature reduction alone. The Greenland shark appears to manage these processes in ways that vertebrate aging biology does not yet fully account for. Some researchers studying extreme vertebrate longevity, including those working on the genetics of bowhead whales and naked mole rats, have suggested that certain cold-adapted lineages may have developed molecular-level aging suppression mechanisms that remain poorly characterized. The Greenland shark, whose genome has been partially sequenced but whose longevity mechanisms remain incompletely understood, may represent the most extreme expression of whatever those mechanisms are. Its lineage survived the Devonian mass extinction, the end Permian event, yet the KPG boundary. It was present in Arctic water before North America had its current shape. Individual animals alive in Arctic water right now were born into a world where no one had yet heard of the United States of America. We have been harvesting them incidentally in commercial fishing operations for decades, killing in a single catch an animal that was alive during the 30 Years' War, without records, without awareness, without any calculation of what we were removing from an ecosystem that evolved over 400 million years with this animal at its center. Some researchers studying North Atlantic deep water ecology have begun to ask what we don't understand about Arctic ecosystems precisely because we have been removing their apex predator without knowing it. From the cold darkness of the Arctic deep to where a predator older than the dinosaurs hunts in 500-year lifetimes, we surface into light and travel south to where a living animal carries in its feathers and bones and behavior the most direct and unambiguous biological link to the age of dinosaurs that exists anywhere on Earth. The cassowary. Something is moving through the oldest rainforest on the planet. It stands 6 feet tall. It has a bony helmet, a casque of dense keratin-sheathed bone, rising from the crown of its skull. Its legs end in three-toed feet, the inner toe terminating in a single dagger-shaped claw 12.5 centimeters long, proportionally identical to the killing claw of Deinonychus. It has made a sound you felt before you heard it, a low-frequency rumble at 23 hertz, below the threshold of human hearing that traveled through the Daintree's dense vegetation for kilometers before reaching you as a pressure in your chest rather than a sound in your ears. This animal is not a dinosaur. In every biological and biomechanical sense that the word describes, it is a dinosaur. The non-avian ones died 66 million years ago. This one did not get the message. The cassowary, Casuarius casuarius, has been known to Western science since 1597, when Dutch sailors encountered it on the island of Suram in Indonesia. Indigenous Australians and Papuans had lived alongside it for tens of thousands of years before that, incorporating it into oral traditions, trade networks, and controlled breeding practices that predate European contact by millennia. The formal evolutionary picture clarified significantly with the 2014 Avian Phylogenomics Project published in Science, which sequenced the genomes of 363 bird species representing all major lineages and placed retites, the group containing cassowaries, emus, ostriches, kiwis, and rheas among the most basal of all living bird lineages, yet with their divergence from the flying bird line estimated at approximately 100 million years ago. Researchers including Dr. Matthew Carano at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of Natural History have worked extensively on the theropod-to-bird transition and the picture that has emerged from decades of comparative anatomy, and genomics is one in which the cassowary is not a bird that resembles a dinosaur, but an animal in which the theropod body plan has been retained with a fidelity that no other living bird approaches. The cassowary's inner toe claw, 12.5 centimeters in length, is the proportional equivalent of the raptorial killing claw found in Deinonychus and Velociraptor, and biomechanical analysis suggests it is used in slashing attacks identical in form to those inferred from theropod claw morphology. The Daintree rainforest of far north Queensland, the cassowary's primary Australian range, is itself approximately 180 million years old, making it a Jurassic-era ecosystem in which the cassowary is not a recent arrival, but a biological continuation. The cassowary produces infrasound calls at 23 hertz, a communication system so low in frequency it passes through dense rainforest vegetation without attenuation, documented in research by Andrew Mack in the 1990s and representing one of the most sophisticated long-range communication systems in any bird species. Its closest extinct Australian relative, Dromornis sturtoni, Sturton's thunderbird, stood 3 meters tall and weighed 650 kilograms, disappearing from the fossil record approximately 50,000 years ago, almost certainly under pressure from the same human hunting that eliminated the Australian megafauna. Verified Dromornis extinction date. The casque on the cassowary's skull remains, despite decades of research, without a definitive functional explanation. Proposed functions include thermoregulation, acoustic amplification for its infrasound calls, display function in dominance and mate selection, and protection during movement through dense vegetation. None of these hypotheses has been confirmed as the primary function, and the casque's internal structure, a spongy bone matrix covered in dense keratin, is more consistent with hadrosaur dinosaur cranial crests used in acoustic resonance than with the display structures of any living bird. No study has settled the question. The casque is, in a precise scientific sense, still unexplained. The cassowary has been declared the world's most dangerous bird by Guinness World Records, and it is directly responsible for at least one documented human fatality on April 12, 1926, in Mosman, Queensland, where a 16-year-old boy was killed when the bird's kick severed his jugular vein. Verified date and details of 1926 fatality. The mainstream scientific explanation for the cassowary's retention of theropod anatomy is the same explanation offered for all evolutionary conservatism. An effective design in a stable environment experiences little selective pressure to change. The cassowary's dangerous anatomy is explained as adaptation to dense rainforest, where powerful legs, heavy body, or in weapons capable of injuring predators confer reproductive advantage. Its infrasound communication is an adaptation to a closed canopy environment where higher frequency sound is blocked by vegetation. The casque's unexplained function is considered a gap in current knowledge rather than evidence of anything outside standard evolutionary biology. Birds are dinosaurs by scientific consensus, and the cassowary is simply a particularly conspicuous example of that continuity. But consider what the mainstream explanation quietly requires us to accept. The cassowary has retained theropod body plan elements, the killing claw, the cursorial leg structure, the robust theropod neck musculature, the infrasound communication, the territorial ambush behavior, not just across the 66 million years since the non-avian dinosaurs disappeared, but across a period that included the total transformation of every ecosystem on Earth, multiple continental collisions, multiple ice ages, multiple extinction events, and the arrival and global expansion of a bipedal primate that eliminated every megapredator it could reach on every continent it colonized. During all of that, the cassowary's fundamental biological architecture was not improved upon. Evolution looked at the theropod template and, for 66 million years, found nothing to change. Some researchers in evolutionary biology describe this as plateau theory, the idea that evolution is capable of reaching solutions of such complete optimization that selection pressure for further change approaches zero. If the cassowary represents such a plateau, then it is not a living relic. It is a proof of concept. The theropod body plan was not eliminated 66 million years ago. It was retained in the one theropod lineage that survived the asteroid winter, and it has been running without revision ever since. The dinosaurs did not disappear. They are in the Daintree rainforest right now, 6 feet tall, with a 12.5 centimeter killing claw, making sounds you feel before you hear. What ended 66 million years ago was not the dinosaurs. It was your assumption about what they looked like. These 10 animals are not a collection of biological curiosities. They are a pattern, and once you see it, you cannot look at a natural history museum, a wildlife documentary, or a rainforest trail the same way again. The cassowary carries the theropod blueprint across 66 million years without revision. The Greenland shark hunts Arctic water in lifetimes that span 5 centuries, using a strategy its lineage perfected in the Devonian. The horseshoe crab has attended 5 mass extinctions and sent no evolutionary feedback that its body plan required updating. The harpy eagle inherited the apex avian predator role of a continent after 60 million years of flightless giants held it and took it skyward. So the giant Pacific octopus descended from the first apex predators in the Cambrian Ocean and responded to 500 million years of evolution by developing distributed intelligence. The saltwater crocodile built the perfect ambush architecture before the first dinosaur existed and has never had reason to rebuild it. The orca replaced the largest predatory fish in Earth's history not with a bigger body, but with culture, with transmitted memory, with strategic thinking across generations. The African lion was painted on a cave wall by humans who feared it 36,000 years ago and is making the same coordinated kill today. The Komodo dragon survives as a compressed and island-bound remnant of a lineage that humans eliminated everywhere else they reached, and the wolverine carries the behavioral template of a Pliocene apex predator into a Rocky Mountain winter and refuses, on a constitutional level, to acknowledge that the world has changed. The mainstream scientific view of these animals is accurate on its own terms. Each is a product of evolutionary processes operating over vast timescales shaped by selection pressure, ecological opportunity, and the accumulated effect of genetic change across millions of generations. There is no anomaly in any of them that requires explanation outside established evolutionary biology. The cassowary is a retite bird. The Greenland shark is a cold-adapted squaliform. The horseshoe crab is a successful marine arthropod. The science is not in question, but science and wonder are not in competition. The mainstream view tells us how. It does not tell us what it means to stand in the Daintree rainforest and understand that the animal moving through the undergrowth is running a body plan that outlasted an asteroid. It does not prepare you for the feeling of knowing that a shark circling in Arctic water right now was born before the American Revolution. The facts of evolutionary biology, examined honestly, I do not diminish the depth of these animals. They amplify it. What connects all 10 is a single truth that the fossil record makes undeniable. Evolution does not always point forward. It sometimes finds an answer so complete that the only instruction it can give across millions of years is to continue. These animals continued through everything, and they are here right now, in the same oceans, the same forests, the same river systems, the same frozen tundra, running the same programs they have always run in a world that has forgotten what produced them. Most people move through that world without seeing any of this. They see a bird, a shark, a crab, an eagle, and they keep walking. You didn't keep walking. You stayed through 10 animals and 450 million years of biological history because something in you understood that the deeper you look, the more real the world becomes. That is not a small thing. Most people never get here. You did. This channel exists for exactly that kind of person. For the ones who look at a living animal and want to know what it was before. For the ones who cannot accept a simplified version of a world this complex and this old. For the ones who believe that understanding where things came from is the only honest way to understand where we are. If that is you, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling me which of these 10 animals changed how you see the world. I read every single one. The dinosaurs did not vanish. They grew feathers, some of them, and kept moving. The ocean's apex predators did not disappear. They went deeper, grew slower, lived longer than civilizations. The Ice Age hunters did not end. They compressed into smaller bodies and carried their ancient ferocity forward into a world that forgot what made them. Every animal on this list is a message from deep time, and the message is the same in every case. The past does not end. It continues, informs you past every day without recognizing. The prehistoric world is not behind us. It is in the Daintree right now, 6 feet tall, with a claw at its feet and a sound in its throat that you feel before you hear. It never left. Subscribe and keep looking.